Somalia calls for blood donations after a devastating Mogadishu bombing leaves hundreds dead and wounded. A Ugandan doctor provides much-needed help for amputees in his hometown. And taking in the sights of South Africa, the slow and old-fashioned way. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhui Ewart in for Vincent Makori, who is on assignment and will join us in a moment. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin in Somalia, where search and rescue operations in response to last weekend's deadly blast in Mogadishu are over as hundreds of young volunteers and government officials cleaned up the rubble and the debris that was blown across the entire neighborhood. Government Information Minister Abdul Rahman Omar Osman says the official and the confirmed number of deaths from Saturday's attack is 281, with more than 300 wounded. Osman says the number of deaths could increase because there may be other victims either taken by their relatives who later died or others who died from their wounds. Although there has been no claim of responsibility, government officials and terrorism experts strongly believe that Al-Shabaab terrorists are behind the explosion. The Somali government has called for 3 days of national mourning. Meanwhile, here in Washington, the White House is strongly condemning the attack, which claimed U.S. citizens among the casualties. VOA reporter Abdul Qadir Mohammed Abdullah was among those injured and evacuated to Turkey for medical treatment. Now, as a result of the massive truck bombing in the capital, Somalia is in desperate need for donated blood to treat survivors. Somalia's Information Minister Abdul Rahman Omar Hassan Osman says Somalia does not have a blood bank and that the limitations of its healthcare system is impeding the medical response. Countries including Turkey and Qatar are providing medical assistance. Osman says the bodies of more than 100 people buried on Monday and, in his words, blown beyond recognition, and that he hoped other bodies could still be identified. Turkish doctors, mainly surgeons and specialists in spine injuries, arrived along with Turkey's health minister on Monday. Minister Osman also says medicine from neighboring nations of Djibouti and Kenya arrived by plane on Tuesday, and an air ambulance was en route from the Gulf state of Qatar. Somalia has been marred in conflict since 1991, when clan warlords overthrew a dictator, then turned on each other. One of the poorest countries in Africa, it faces severe food insecurity and relies on foreign donors to support its institutions and basic services. Now to presidential politics in Kenya. Opposition leader Raila Odinga on Tuesday suspended its demonstrations against the Electoral Commission amid claims of police brutality on protesters across the country. Odinga says his party will advise their supporters on the way forward after the Heroes' Day celebrations Friday. Also on Tuesday, Kenya's Deputy President William Ruto told a press conference that there would be no problem if the election board agrees to meet a raft of demands made by the opposition ahead of a repeat poll on October 26.
Our position is that IEBC is an independent institution. They make their decisions independently of all the other arms of government and all the other competitors. But if they choose to have a discussion with our competitors with a view of firing this member of staff or firing that member of staff or changing this supplier or changing another supplier, we told them clearly we will not raise any issues. That is their business. If they so agree, they find a different printer, they find a different supplier of technology. As long as the elections are there, we will participate.
Now, Odinga has withdrawn from the rerun presidential poll. Kenya's deputy president, now Kenya's election board says it will proceed with the vote, but Odinga's withdrawal has raised concerns of a political crisis. Now, for more on Kenya's political crisis, I'm joined live via Skype from Nairobi by Africa 54's managing editor, Vincent Makori. Vincent, what is the mood like in Nairobi?
Well, the country has been in the grip of uncertainty now for the last few weeks, especially since Mr. Raila Odinga withdrew, excuse me, and this is because nobody knows for sure whether an election will take place on the 26th of October. And we know that although the IEBC continues with all the preparations for the vote on the 26th of October, the opposition, the main opposition, NASA led by Raila Odinga, has said it will ensure that no election takes place, at least nationwide, because the Constitution requires that for that election to be valid, for a president to be duly elected, the election has to happen countrywide. So we have witnessed protests in especially Mr. Raila Odinga's strongholds. These protests were called a few weeks ago to be sustained throughout the period until they make sure that the election is almost impossible to conduct. Now, we've seen so much pain and anguish come out of those protests. People have died up to this point, and we know that in a number of cases, most of those people, in fact, were shot by police at close range. Now, Mr. Odinga has suspended the protests for now until Friday. Of course, he's keeping his people still in a state of waiting for further instructions, because the commitment he has made is that there's no way an election can happen on the 26th of October in a free and fair kind of environment.
So this was just a few hours ago when he suspended these demonstrations, Vincent, but do we even know what his move is likely to be in the next couple of days?
Nobody really knows, because we know that Mr. Raila Odinga always has like a plan A, plan B, plan C. But some of the analysts are also feeling like maybe Mr. Odinga has, in some respect, been in a way caught caught in a situation where he's taking a risk that could jeopardize his legacy. The call to people for mass action when he has actually decided to quit the process himself has made many wonder, what is his interest? Why does he want to disrupt the elections if he's not going to be participating? The bigger plan that we've been speculating, people have been speculating, is that he would want to deny Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta votes from areas where he has a lot of support, and therefore make sure that under the Constitution, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta's votes will only come from certain parts of the country, and therefore will not fulfill the constitutional requirement, which will render his presidency illegitimate, and therefore probably lead them back to the Supreme Court.
A very unusual political climate for Kenyans there. Vincent, will catch up with you tomorrow. Vincent, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Africa 54's managing editor Vincent Makori reporting live via Skype from Nairobi. Now to South Africa, where President Jacob Zuma has reshuffled his cabinet for the second time in 7 months, swapping around 6 of his ministers, including those for Home Affairs, Education and Communications. Zuma sacked Higher Education Minister Blade Nzimande. This means the only casualty of Zuma's latest reshuffle is also one of his most vocal critics. In a surprise move, Zuma appointed a close confidant to be energy minister as his government tries to push through one of South Africa's biggest nuclear deals in decades. The appointment of David Makhlobo, a formerly state security minister, to head the energy ministry heightens speculation that Zuma is trying to conclude the nuclear deal before his second presidential term ends in 2019. Zuma fired respected Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan in a March cabinet reshuffle, causing the rand and other financial assets to weaken and prompting the downgrading of South Africa's credit ratings. A demographic dividend is a bonus reaped by a country when the proportion of its working people in the total population is high. This indicates that more people can be productive and contribute to economic growth. Africa is the fastest growing continent with the most youthful population in the world. But the continent faces several obstacles. Reporter Khalil Gay has more on harnessing Africa's demographic dividend.
In the year 2030, 70% of Africans will reach working age. Such a dramatic demographic change will require new ways of empowering women and girls. Their good health is paramount to their meeting their full potential. For Nancy Wildfire Field, president of the Global Business Coalition for Health, or GBH Health, good health is good for business.
But across Africa, there are multiple barriers which limit young people's access to information on their sexual and reproductive health rights and to high-quality products and services.
African leaders know that. Indeed, they have led an ongoing effort to harness the demographic dividend. At the last African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, they collectively agreed to elevate the demographic dividend as a theme for 2017.
The Africa we want is looking for its own solutions, ways to carry forward the integration and the inclusiveness of the Agenda 2063 and the Sustainable Development Agenda 2030 for the benefits of our young people. And UNFPA is firmly committed to working with you and playing our role.
In New York, ally agencies to the United Nations Population Fund, like the World Bank and the Africa Development Bank, as well as several other actors of the private sector, joined UNFPA for a high-level dialogue to discuss the private sector's role in supporting Africa's demographic change.
But across Africa, there are multiple barriers which limit young people's access to information on their sexual and reproductive health rights and to high-quality products and services.
But Africa still faces poverty, governance challenges, and several other factors like armed conflicts. The situation of youth employment has forced many young people risk and lose their lives crossing the Atlantic for better opportunities.
It's much more than creating jobs for young people. I think it's about peace, it's about security, it's about stability, but also it's mainly about dealing with high population growth. Unless we address the root causes, that is all about high population growth, we will not have a chance to enjoy the Africa we want by the Horizon 2063.
Partnership with the private sector will surely help Africa to harness the demographic dividend and achieve sustainable development. It will also help the continent build. Resilience is required. Prevent radicalization is a must. In Dakar, Senegal, Khalil Gay, returning from New York for VOA News.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Coming up, changing lives in Uganda, one prosthetic at a time. Stay with us.
This is a country that I chose to become a citizen. I didn't have to become a citizen. I chose to become a citizen.
I feel like America gave me an opportunity to pursue my passion as an artist.
I really believe that clean eating is a way to a more successful life, or a happier life, if you want to put it that way.
One of the things that helps me wake up every morning is doing better, being better.
We grew up poor, and so I'm always focused on helping the working class be able to have a more comfortable lifestyle.
I'm passionate about doing justice every day. I oftentimes say that justice is a verb, not a noun. You know, I believe in action and moving the ball forward.
In the United States, the number of amputees is expected to double by 2050. There are similar statistics for the developing world, but many of those places do not have the infrastructure to support those trying to function with a lost limb. One doctor in Uganda is trying to provide for amputees in his town, person by person. Here's VOA's Kevin Enox.
Designing a prosthetic is not easy nor cheap, but Ugandan orthopedist Julius Gabula does what he can to help whoever he can.
While working on them, it is not a must that you have to fit them, that they should go back to the way they were living before. But we restore them, we rehabilitate them to the extent that they are able to move in a similar way they were moving. However, it is not possible to go back to what God made at first.
Prosthetics are life-changing for anyone, but can truly change a life in places like Uganda that do not have much infrastructure to help the handicapped.
There are lots of challenges which are out there. Public transport, where if you as an amputee, if someone finds you like public means, like taxis, if they find you with clutches, they'll bypass you because they know that you're going to take a lot of time to enter the taxi.
The best government estimates suggest about 2 million Ugandans are living with some kind of disability, and prosthetics can allow them to re-enter society.
I thought I had reached the end in life when I lost my leg, but this artificial limb has been very helpful. And the orthopedic technician encouraged me a lot and told me I would walk and be able to work again. This all sounded like a dream. I did not know about artificial limbs, and I thought I would crawl all my life. After I received training on how to use the prosthetic, I am now able to work normally.
But prosthetics are not cheap. Gabula sets up payment plans with his clients, but sometimes he cannot even get the materials he needs to build his prosthetics.
The challenges they face, the one is that materials are very expensive to get. Even when you get them on local market, you get a little, and others you need help. For example, you need a donor to be sponsoring you to get the materials from outside such that you can work on a patient.
Gabula has helped more than 150 people. He is trying to open up another workshop so he can help more. Kevin Enochs, VOA News.
A new study that even shocked the researchers reveals that most people in poor and middle-income countries suffer unimaginable pain without any help. The results of a study on pain management motivated the research group to find a way to help the millions of people who suffer needlessly. VOA's Carol Pearson has more.
A new study finds that most people in low and middle-income countries lack even the cheapest painkillers to manage agonizing pain.
We found in this study 61 million people every year who are living and dying in pain and with serious health-related suffering that we know that palliative care and pain relief could solve.
Here, Professor Felicia Knoll visits a cancer ward in Mexico. Knoll's own surgery for breast cancer became the catalyst for her interest in global pain management.
I woke up from a mastectomy and I remember the horror of the pain of not being able to breathe, and yet I got access almost immediately to pain relief, which allowed me to push through it much more easily. When I thought about other women going through this, when I thought about children, burn victims, and having their wounds dressed and cleaned and the agony of that without pain relief, and then when I found out how inexpensive it is to solve this problem, a real win-win in global health, that was when we really decided to move forward.
She chaired an international study on pain relief published in The Lancet. The results shocked even the researchers.
We looked across the world using, as a tracer, access to morphine, and more than 100 countries could satisfy less than 30% of need for pain relief just for palliative care alone. And in fact, the vast majority have almost nothing.
In the U.S., morphine costs 3 cents per dose. In low-income countries, it costs 5 times as much if it's available. If costs were the same for all countries, the study says it would cost $145 million to close the gap on pain relief. Even developing countries can work to close the pain gap. Uganda is one example. The government makes and distributes morphine for the country's hospitals. Doctors are trained in administering the drug, and patients are monitored. Knoll has enlisted the help of the World Bank to end the pain gap. Plans have yet to be formulated, but the goal is to provide pain relief for the millions of people who truly need it. Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, taking it slow across South Africa. We'll be right back.
Our position is that IEBC is an independent institution. They make their decisions independently of all the other arms of government.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Ride-hailing startups that cater only to women are catching on in Brazil, reflecting safety concerns in one of the biggest markets for Uber and other services, which have invested heavily in security features. One of the new mobile apps, Femi Taxi, has expanded into 6 Brazilian cities and is eyeing other Latin American markets. Femi Taxi now has more than 20,000 rides per month and 1,000 drivers. The founder says he plans to expand into 2 more Brazilian cities in coming months, then Mexico and Argentina early next year. Next up, this installation looks like something from the set of the iconic film Saturday Night Fever. But unlike a disco dance floor, this walkway was developed by Google in cooperation with British energy harvesting company Pavagen. It creates its own energy and is interactive. Under the flooring are 100 electronic magnetic generators that convert movement into energy. The energy is then used to light 176 colored panels in the walkway. The more energy people make when they walk, the more lights turn on. The installation also creates a GIF animation of people when they walk across the walkway, another nudge for people to run and jump over the floor. And finally, driven by nostalgia, the steam train tourism sector in South Africa is steadily growing. Visitors and enthusiasts get to enjoy the South African landscape in the slow lane. Steam train tourism evolved out of South Africa's extensive steam train sector and relatively recent move to diesel. South Africa has a rich steam heritage, having been one of the biggest operators of steam in the world with its own abundant coal reserves, and that's what's trending today. Now, the film Human Flow by internationally acclaimed artist and activist Ai Weiwei highlights the plight of refugees around the world. The Chinese dissident is not the first to make a documentary about the displaced, but his film captures the massive flow of humanity on our planet from on high using drones. Weiwei filmed in 23 different countries in 40 different refugee camps of people fleeing war, environmental crisis, and religious persecution. His goal is to show that the flood of refugees has global repercussions. VOA's Penelope Pulu spoke with the artists.
Being a refugee is much more than a political status. It is the most pervasive kind of cruelty that can be exercised against a human being. You are forcibly robbing this human being of all aspects that would make human life not just tolerable, but meaningful in many ways.
According to the documentary Human Flow, over 65 million people in the world today have been forcibly displaced from their homes. Using cameras attached to drones, Ai Weiwei films humanity's movement from up high.
Human flow, as always, happens in the human history. It's, in many cases, it's part of our humanity and our civilization.
But the social anomaly of our times, says the filmmaker, is the effort by countries to stem that flow by preventing refugees from crossing borders and integrating into new societies. After a harrowing sea voyage and days of walking, many refugees from the Middle East make their way to northern Greece, only to be stopped on its border with Macedonia.
Over 70 borders are built up their fences and walls, and forbidden any refugee to pass through. So by doing that, they really not only stopped the lifeline of those refugees to trying to find a safe place, even just temporarily across the border and go to another location, but also put them in extreme dangerous condition.
2 months old and born here, but he didn't have any vaccination, no showering facilities. The hygienic situation is very bad.
Ai's look at the refugee crisis is as intimate as it is global.
داخل دریای دیدیم است. این خانمش جنازه شمیجه است. این بچهش جنازه شمیجه است امیاله. این دخترک شمیجه است. این بچه‌ک شام در دریاست. این برادرم سخی احمد است.
Human Flow shows masses fleeing wars, religious persecution, and environmental disasters. Ai Weiwei warns if we don't save those people from displacement, entire generations, born without identity, prospects for a better life for a country, will be vulnerable to extremism and radicalization.
Those people, those child, when they grow up, they only see how their parents being badly treated, unfairly treated. The world watching but not doing anything. What kind of image would remain in their mind?
Penelope Pulu, VOA News, Washington.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Most people enjoy listening to music. But is this expression actually about songs and tunes?
Music to my ears.
Jonathan, I cannot believe we have to work over the weekend.
Did you not hear the news? The meeting for the project got canceled. No work this weekend after all.
Awesome! That is music to